Thank you for being here. We're looking at Matthew chapter 5, and we're beginning a new section in the section that we've been dealing with. And the section we've been dealing with is the salt and the light, and we have finished verse 13, the salt thing, and we want to now walk into verse 14 down through verse 16. Interesting that he gives one verse on the salt idea, and now he's going to give us 3 verses in relationship to the light. The salt idea was basically negative, had a negative flair to it. This is all positive, which is good, and walks us into verse 14, 15, and 16. This is going to be a little different. If you've got Bibles, appreciate that, and I want you to, we're going to walk through some other scriptures in order to get a understanding of the context and surrounding, at the beginning of this message, the surrounding and context of this great statement in verse 14. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Verse 14, you are the light of the world. I guess I expected you to gasp at the reading of that statement. You have to tremble when you think about it. The statement is so earth-shaking and overwhelming. You, hey, look at me, I'm talking to you. You are the light of the world. There's several difficulties with the statement. One is the fact that it literally is the fulfillment of all the Beatitudes. So if you are not the light of the world, then the Beatitude is a joke. In the Beatitudes, he's whacked us on the back. In the Beatitude, he's congratulated us. In the Beatitude, he said, oh, you've arrived. Now he spills into this section and says, hey, you're the light of the world. So obviously, if you aren't a light of the world, the Beatitudes don't mean anything. All the mercy business and all the obtaining and all the idea of inheriting the land and all the stuff about being pure and all the seeing God stuff and peacemaker business and all that's going on in the Beatitudes is one big joke. The whole idea of whacking you on the back and congratulating you, it was all a fake unless you are the light of the world. If you are the light of the world, oh, the Beatitudes take on all this meaning. Oh, the significance of it, the strength of the statements of the Beatitude become reality. The whack on the back becomes straighten your shoulders, get your head up high. Woo! It is the truth. You are the light of the world. See, if you aren't the light of the world, then the whole beginning of the Beatitudes is a dropout. It's a nothing, man. It doesn't mean anything. It was just some preacher saying some dumb thing that didn't make any sense anyway. The whole idea of congratulations, you are poor in spirit. You are absolutely helpless. Oh, congratulations because you mourn in that. You just struggle in that. You say, you look at your helplessness and say, oh, there's no chance for me. But in the amazing resource of his person, he comes. And as he comes, you and him get together, and out of that, the kingdom is formed. Congratulations, you are the kingdom of God. Woo! You're the light of the world. See, if you aren't the light of the world, then the whole kingdom thing is down the tubes. If you aren't the light of the world, then the whole kingdom thing doesn't mean anything. You aren't weak. Hey, do your thing. Come on. But if you are weak and he has come, then, you're the light of the world, man. See how this hangs on that? There's another problem with this whole you are the light of the world. And the problem is Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Speaking of himself. Now the same Jesus turns and says, you are the light of the world. Whoa, wait a minute. Has he just elevated me to his position? That's enough to make you tremble. Come on, that makes you gasp, doesn't it? Isn't it interesting that Jesus never said, and it's never said in the scriptures, the imagery of salt is never applied to Jesus. Jesus never said about himself, I am the salt of the earth. But he did say, I am the light of the world. Now he's turned to us and said, you are the light of the world. And how could I be the light of the world, Jesus, and you be the light of the world? How could that possibly, can I possibly, no, come on, how could that can't, man, that's scary. Because all of a sudden you've jammed me into Christ's likeness. All of a sudden you've called me into, I've got to be what he is. All of a sudden you've put me into, I've got to comprehend what he's comprehended, be where he's been, do what he does. Nah. Let's take a razor blade and cut this section out. Something wrong here, isn't there? What is he saying to us? So see, this scripture is enough to make you tremble. Really is. Really is. What I want to do is I want to take you to some of the scriptures where Jesus said and referred to himself as the light and try to put this in a context for you. And to do that, we're going to have to walk through several scriptures. And so if you've got your Bibles available, and we'll have some of it on the screen as well. John 8:12. Interesting passage. Because it's in John 8:12, and I want to lay these out for you, and then we want to go back and take them in their context. In John 8:12, he gives this tremendous statement, which is, then Jesus said to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Woo, that's a promise and a half, isn't it? Now see, I can buy that. I have no problem with that at all. To embrace Jesus as the light of the world, and to follow him. Wouldn't that be something? And if you'd follow him, obviously, if he's the light of the world, you'd never be in darkness, so all darkness would be removed from your life, and we would literally have the light of life, which light and life is always connected together. So it's just, wow. I buy that. I want to get in on that. He continued in John 9:5 and said to his disciples, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. I could go for that. So there's only one light in our world, and that's Jesus, and he is the light of the world. And as long as he is around, we're okay. So it's back to him and a focus on him. See, I got that. I want that. I can buy that. I'm in on that. Even the prophecies of the Old Testament got in on this. Because the Matthew chapter 4, verse 16, which is a quotation out of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2, said this. As Jesus was going into Galilee to establish his ministry, it said this, the people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. And upon those who sat in the region and shadow of darkness, light has dawned. Can you imagine the ministry? Jesus marches into Galilee and all these miracles take place and all these messages are given and the light of God just shines in a region that's been totally, absolutely dark. Oh, Jesus has arrived. I am the light. See, I go for that. I have no problem with that. You can't talk about the light idea without going to the prologue of John. And in John chapter 1, verse 4, he says this, talking about Jesus, obviously, in him was life, and the life was the light of men, which again is the connection between life and light. And evidently, and you know that's true, because wherever there's life flourishing. Take away the light and nothing grows, everything dies. So light and life connected. He went on in that same passage in John 1:8 to say, he was not, talking about John the Baptist, he was not that light. No, John wasn't the light. But he was sent to bear witness of that light, which was Jesus. Isn't that my role? To bear witness of the light, which is Jesus himself. So I'm just going around saying, he is the light, he is the light, he is the light. Jesus is the light of the world. But then he comes into this passage and says, you are the light of the world. Isn't that a conflict? Now, I want to walk you through these statements. I want to go back. I want to pick up on each one of these statements and see the context. This won't take long, just about an hour and a half. So John chapter 8, verse 12. And if you've got your scripture, you can look at some additional scriptures that are around the context. The interesting thing about that passage in John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus spoke to them again saying, I am the light of the world, where he absolutely down to it, 100%, proclaims himself as the light of the world and says, if you follow me, you shall not walk in darkness, but you shall have, but have the light of life. Now the context of that is really interesting, because the context of that is the woman taken and caught in the act of adultery. Huh. Wow. And in Luke, that is in John chapter 8, verse 12, he has climaxed that whole scene by giving this phenomenal statement. Now, the Pharisees and the scribes have grabbed a hold of a woman who has actually been caught in the act of adultery, and you wonder how they knew that, or how they got there, or why were they there, or well, we won't go into that. So you got scribes and Pharisees brought to him a woman in verse 3 caught in the act of adultery. And they set her in the midst. And all of this, you understand, was for a trap, according to verse 5. And they turned to Jesus and said, now Moses in the law commanded us that she should be stoned. What do you say? It was all a trick. And it says that they said this, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. And you know what Jesus did? Ignored them. I love it. He ignored them. Leaned down, wrote in the sand. And of course, there's been much debate about what did he write. Nobody knows. So, hey, whatever your opinion is probably right. Because there's no way to prove anything. So, hey, why even discuss it, you know? But he ignored them. And they couldn't take that, so they pestered him. And it says, so when they continued asking him, so they bugged him about this. They wouldn't let him off the hook. Finally, he didn't ignore them anymore. He raised himself up and he said to them, he who is without sin among you, let him throw the stone, be the first one to throw the stone. You know that story. And of course, they all dropped their stones and disappeared. So here's a woman then that he's with her by himself, and it says when Jesus was left alone, the woman was standing in the midst, and Jesus raised himself up and said, woman, have all of these accusers, verse 10, have all of these accusers, where are they? Has no one condemned you? So no one has condemned her. And he turned to her and said, neither do I. Isn't that good news? Neither do I. Go and sin no more. So there's no accusation, there's no condemning, there's no judgmental attitude, there's no judgment coming out of the lips of Jesus towards her. It's just total, absolute, hey, you're forgiven, go off and have a big time and live right. Do the right thing, come on, sin no more. Then Jesus said, I am the light of the world. See the context? Then Jesus said, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a woman caught in the act of adultery. They received no condemnation from me, and now is going to go off forgiven and walking in light. I am the light of the world. And he went on to express it more, especially when the Pharisees then in verse 13 turned to him and said, you bear witness of yourself. And the Bible says you ought to have more. So this is just your opinion. So there's nobody to back up your opinion, so that eliminates that. We're not going to trust you. And Jesus said, it is my opinion that I am the light of the world. That is my opinion. But guess what? The Father's opinion also backs me up. And those are the two witnesses, me and my Father. And you know the reason the Father is my witness? Because he actually lives within me and is literally doing this through me. And he begins to expand that whole concept. So when Jesus says, I am the light of the world, it's not aren't I something, light of the world. It's, whoa, the Father lives in me and expresses himself through me. That's why I'm the light of the world, because I'm full of the light, boys. That makes sense to you? Let me give you another one. Turn a few pages. John 9. It's the second one we read. It's John 9:5. And in John, the Gospel of John, chapter 9, verse 5, Jesus said, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Now, what's the scene here? The context is a man who was born blind. And as an expression of the tradition and the theology of that hour, in verse 2, the disciples turned to Jesus and said, Rabbi, who sinned? This man or his parents, that he was born blind? Now that's really a stupid statement all the way around. Who sinned? This man or his parents, that he was born blind? Well, how could this man sin before he was born blind? Duh. So it isn't like this guy sinned and then, now you got blindness. Well, he was born that way. So it had to sin before. You guys are a little thick this morning. So he says, listen, it wasn't for either purpose. It wasn't for either one. I mean, neither one. It isn't about parents or it is about him. You know why this guy is born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. God is going to do something really great to literally display his light. Wow. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one works. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And he goes on and heals the man. And what was the impact of the statement? The impact of the statement is here. Guys, I'm in tune with the Father. The Father sent me, the Father filled me, and I am going to give light in this man's life. And this man is going to see the light and walk in the light. And as long as I'm in the world, I'm going to be the light. Why? Because the Father has sent me and gives his light through me. So Jesus is sourced with the light. Interesting what Jesus said. Now, go back to the Matthew 4 passage, which was the prophecy idea. John the Baptist has been put into prison, and Jesus is headed for Galilee. And Matthew says this is a fulfillment of the prophecy. And what is the prophecy? It is this simple prophecy that is given to us in chapter 4, verse 16. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. Obviously referring to Jesus going to Galilee. And upon those who sat in the region and shadow of darkness, light has dawned. So the whole Galilean ministry of Jesus is referred to as the light dawning on a people who are sitting in darkness. What's the context of that? Oh, the context is easy. End of chapter 3, Jesus has walked into the presence of John the Baptist, said, you're going to baptize me. They go down into the river Jordan. They come up out of the river Jordan, and the Father, through the Spirit, fills the man called Jesus. And everything that's going to happen in the life of Jesus from this point on is going to be explained in terms of, he's a man filled with the Spirit of God. He isn't going to do what he does because he's God, although he is God. But that's not how he's going to do what he does. He's going to do what he does because he's a man filled with God, filled with the Spirit. Every single gospel account gives that record. No ministry takes place in the life of Jesus until he's filled with the Spirit. Nothing happens in the life of Jesus that we know of until he's filled with the Spirit. Every good thing that came out of the life of Jesus was because of the fullness of the Spirit. He's sourced by the very essence of the Spirit of God. Here's a man filled with the Spirit of God. If you want to know what a guy looks like when he's filled with the Spirit, he looks like Jesus. If you want to know the attitude a guy has when he's filled with the Spirit, has the attitude of Jesus. If you want to know how a guy handles himself when he's filled with the Spirit, look at Jesus. This is the standard. This is what the light does when it shines through you. It produces the life of Jesus. He immediately, at chapter 4, goes into the temptation hour and defeats the devil. How? By the light of the Spirit that lived within him. And through Jesus, this light shined, and the devil couldn't maintain it, man. Could not maintain it, but it was thwarted at every hand by the light of God shining through a man who's filled with the Spirit. And then we come into this passage where he's going into Galilee, and a light dawns. What light? The light he got in the fullness of the Spirit. So when Jesus says, I am the light of the world, he's not talking about God has arrived although he had. But when he talks about, I am the light of the world, what's he talking about? In every single context, folks, it's about one single thing, that the Father has come and lived in me, and I have become a platform for the shining of the light. And the reason I'm the light of the world is not because of me, it's because of the Father that's literally making himself known through me. That's the context. Now he comes to the Beatitudes and says, boys, listen to me. You know what's going down here? You're weak. I know. You're helpless. Absolutely. My overwhelming resource, the Spirit of Jesus, the Spirit of the Father, is literally going to come and fill you. And you know what's that going to mean? That means that intimacy is going to take place. A saturation, a coming together, a messing of your being and his being until the two of you have literally become one. And in that oneness, you have become the kingdom. And you know what the kingdom is? It is a man who is the light of the world. Why? Because he's so bright? No, because he's filled with the light. As I am the light, you are the light. You are the light of the world. So do we expect you to be like Jesus? Yes! Why? Because what was in him can be in you. Do we expect you to act like Jesus? Yes! Why? It's a natural, because what burns in him and lightens the way. Do we expect you to stumble over what's in front of you? No. Why? Because the light lives in you and you can see. Do we expect you to be compromised, sucked in at every point? Well, no. Why? Because the light lives in you and you are the light. And whoa, it's real bright. You got sunglasses? I am the light. You are the light. Isn't that neat? He's just called us. Now, with that as a context, let's come to our statement in verse 14. Just give you a couple ideas. In verse 14, you are the light of the world. Well, how strong is this? Well, it is emphatic. Meaning it's really definite. Meaning there really isn't any wiggle room. Meaning, whoa, you're either in or you're out. Meaning, wow, can I think about it? No, because it is the way it is, and that's it. Can I adjust it? No. Is there any compromise on it? Well, it's emphatic. Now you see that in several ways in the statement. You are, and this shows up lots of times in passages, and we've walked through this, but the pronoun you is there twice. In other words, it's there by itself, humus, and it's there in estis, which is the verb. So you got it there twice. So you. In fact, one man translated this, one scholar translated this, you and you alone are the light of the world. So it's really strong. That you, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking about everybody, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking about the whole world, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you are the light of the world. Well, who's he talking about? Well, he's taking us back to the kingdom thing, the beatitude thing. It's here I am in my weakness, and here he is in his strength, and we've come together. So out of me is spilling all this mercy, out of me is spilling this peacemaker thing, out of this is spilling purity, out of this is spilling mercy, out of this, all this stuff is coming out of me. And why is it? Because I've been meshed together. I've joined this. There's a union between him and me, and in this intimacy of his presence. Oh, don't you love this? In the intimacy of his presence, in the embrace of his person, in the oneness with God. Do you live in that? Please live in that. It's very lonely to be on your own. Don't be on your own. Just to be real blunt with you, you're too dumb to make the key decisions of your life. You really do need help. So don't make decisions on your own. Please, you gotta You got to get into the intimacy, man. You got to be saturated with his person. Please, he got you. I'm talking to you, he says. And it's really emphatic that he narrows it down to you and you. Now, the verb is in the indicative, which in this case ends up giving the flavor of an imperative, meaning a command. So when he says, you are the light, it almost smells like or sounds like, whoa, are you commanding me? Yes, I am. Well, is there any way to back off? No, there's no backing off on. Well, is there any way to get out of it? No, there's no way to get out of this. This is the essence of who you are. See, it's not, well, out of all the kingdom people that are going to be, at least 25% will be the light of the world. No, every kingdom person is the light of the world. Who's the kingdom person? The one who's totally weak, the one who's been filled with the Spirit, and they've come together. And in that intimacy, you have become the kingdom, and that person is the light of the world. He doesn't have any choice. He can't help himself. It's just the way it is, because it's a state of being. That's really emphatic. So there's no adjustment, there's no compromise in this thing. It's just straightforward. In fact, he really bellows that out in verse 15. Look at this thing. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a bushel. Well, certainly not. Why would you light a lamp, which you are the light, weakness, and you've become the light, so would we put you under a bushel? No, you are the light of the world. See, there's no wiggle room in that. We put you on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. So we set you out before this whole community and say, shine, boy. In fact, he moves you into verse 16 and says, let your light so shine. Now, it's interesting, in the Greek language, the so is at the first word of that verse. It's the first word of that verse, which puts the emphasis on that word. And it connects you back to verse 15. And it means thus or in this manner. So he says, in the manner that you are a light and can't be put under a basket, in the manner that you are a lamp and are set on a light stand so you can give light to the... So shine! And shine is an imperative verb. So it's a command to shine. Shine, boy, shine. See, there's no wiggle room in that. There's no way to get out of that. It's so definite. It's so nailed down. It's emphatic. We on track? So his weakness, my weakness, his overwhelming strength, and the two of us have come together in this intimate relationship, and in that intimate relationship, I am a kingdom person. And what's the kingdom person like? He's the light of the world. No choice. No choice. Now, obviously, to restate is to say the embracing. See, this is absolutely emphatic, no question, but he's tying it all into the embracing, the intimacy of the relationship. You are the light of the world. We are being called to be Christ-like. No question about that. It's nailed down for us. Let's go back to John chapter 8, verse 12. Let me give you that verse again. Then Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have. Do you see that? Have the light of life. The Greek word there for have is echo. It means to possess. You are going to possess. So there is a sense in this whole embracing thing where I possess him and he possesses me. And I love that dualism. Because it's the only religion that you ever come up against, folks, where you can talk about, I have God and God has me. Now I belong to Jesus. Jesus belongs to me. This is the only world religion where you got anything even close to that. That you can stomp into the presence of God and say, God, I own you. I have you. I possess you. You're mine. There isn't any world religion that will let you do that. Even the devil doesn't let you do that, people. You never have the devil. He always has you. You never use him, he always uses you. Every time. So all through the scriptures, when it talks about demon possession, it's not talking about you possessing him, it's him possessing you. But when you walk into this intimate relationship, you know what you got on your hands? Oh, I have him, which means I possess him, and he, God, is a possession of mine. Oh. Now, how could I possibly possess God? Oh, because he gives himself to you. See, the devil never gives himself to you. And since he never gives himself to you, you never can possess him. But God says, I love you and I possess you. But wait a minute. I love you and possess you, and you're going to, I love you. I'm going to give myself to you, and you get to possess him as well. Yay! That is overwhelming, isn't it? That's the union. That's the embrace. See, this isn't just, oh, I give myself to God. Okay, he owns me now. Well, it's not just slave stuff, see. This is son stuff, where I give myself to him, but he gives himself to me. And he becomes my DNA, and I begin to be shaped by him. And he literally becomes, he literally, I use him, he uses me. We're together in this, man. It's not me and him, it's us. That's the embrace. And that's the emphasis where the light of the world begins to take place in my life. I am the light of the world. Paul got a hold of this. We'll give you one more. Romans 13:12. Paul got a hold of this. You know what Paul said? He said, the night is far spent. The day is at hand. Therefore, let us cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. Did you get that? Read it again. The night is far spent. The day is at hand. Therefore, let us cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. Cast off? Yes. Cast off. You got that. Put on. You know what put on means? It literally means sink into. I know you guys do this. You put you have two chairs and you put your pants between them when you go to bed at night. You hook one leg, one part of the leg over here, one part, so the pants are all just nicely formed there. And when you get up out of bed, you go. That's the word. That's the word. That's the verb. You just sink into. You just. He said, that's what I want you to do. I want you to cast off the light, and I just want you to sink into. See, this is not doing light. This is sinking into, and the word armor is a tool, instrument idea. So the whole idea of the passage is that you would literally run from darkness, just run from darkness, and just jump into the pants of light, and whoa. That's the imagery. Isn't that phenomenal? And you're ready for your world. See, this is not strike the matches, get the kindling. This is not build the fire. See, this is run from darkness and jump into the, and it's in the embrace. Which again brings us in our passage back to the whole Sermon on the Mount thing. That here I am in my weakness, here he is in his strength, and it's in that embrace. I got to convince you of this. Everything you need is found in that embrace. Everything you need is found in that embrace. What do you want me to do? Nothing. I want you to get into the embrace. What's the steps to take to... No, just get in the embrace. Don't have to take any steps. Just want the embrace. Just open to the embrace. In fact, Jesus is so stuck on this for your life. If you crack the door open an inch, and he'll jam his foot in it, man, and you won't be able to shut it. Because he's pressing you. What? For the embrace. Everything you need is in the embrace. Please, get into the embrace. Jesus, this is absolutely mind-boggling. That everything that you are, you've brought us into. And you are the light of the world. Now you've turned to us. We are the light of the world. You said as long as you were in the world, you were the light of the world. I guess in a sense then, physically, you're not in the light. You're not in the world, so you're not the light of the world now. We are. So what you are is what we are because you've come to live in us as the Father lived in you. And as you were the light of the world because the Father sourced your life, so now we are the light of the world because you're sourcing us. And I'm a little nervous, God, about the idea that you didn't give us any wiggle room. There's no shutdown time. There's no, well, I'm kind of dim today. Because it was all determined by your presence in us. I wonder what would happen to me, Jesus, if I saw every circumstance in my life as an opportunity to shine your light, to demonstrate who you are. And the greater the pressure, the more messed up the circumstance, the more heated, the more angry, the more desperate the scene, the greater your light will be displayed. Could I be that in you? Dear Jesus, I want my family to live in the light. I want it to be so bright they can't sleep at night because the light's shining. The light is shining. And here's what I'm going to do today, God. I'm running from darkness. Just as Paul told me to. I'm running from darkness. And the way I'm doing that is I'm running to you. To jump into. Sink down into. Your life in me. Lord, make us a church full of light. Will you give yourself to this? Heads are bowed. Will you give yourself to Him? Fresh, new, deeper for this week. Will you walk this week in utter awareness of what's shining out of you? And that you've been put on an elevated place, a lampstand, to shine in a world that is dark. And that as Galilee sat in darkness, and Jesus walked in and was the light that dawned in darkness. So you, I'm talking to you, you are the light in the darkness of Lebanon, Tennessee, Mount Juliet, Tennessee, Wilson County. I don't want the responsibility. Sorry, you're a kingdom person. You're a kingdom person. There's no exemption. It's who you are. In the embrace that makes the kingdom. Seek with me, will you?